We were rolling down Beale Street in the Tennessee summer heat. I can't say it's a land of free, but I tell you the booze runs cheap. And then we met Drake's dad. Told him we came from Hamilton. He said he knew a Canadian girl who had a thing for Americans.
We've got to start, Max, with the story behind Drake's dad. So can you take us back to that night in Memphis and what happened?
The song is mostly just about, friendship, I think, and loving your friends and loving the magic of the night and going out and seeing what can happen.
Right.
Actually, the other,
you're there, you're in Memphis, and you're in a club, and someone says, "Hey, that's Dennis Graham, that's Drake's dad."
Yeah, our one friend Adam, who actually makes an appearance in the second verse of the song for taking off his pants.
Yes.
You know your one friend that has like 2 drinks
It
and
is the morning report,
and he gets naked immediately.
Yeah.
He loves Drake culture and like everything about Drake, and we all love Drake, but who doesn't? But he recognized Dennis from across the bar, and we were all very giddy and very excited. And Dennis was very nice.
Yeah.
And then Dennis starred in the music video.
Yeah, so how did that happen? So he actually then agreed. So you wrote this song, and then he says, "Sure, I'll be in your video."
Yeah, so our friends Shane and Mark directed the video, and Shane was actually on the trip, and Shane was pretty set on kind of recreating the trip scene for scene. And so we said, okay, we need to get Drake's dad in the video. And it turns out we have some mutual friends. And in trying to schedule it, though, we had a window when we were going to be in Memphis to shoot. And Dennis wasn't sure if he could be there, so he sent his brother Chris, Drake's uncle, to be his stand-in. So there's one scene at like the 25-second mark where we meet Drake's dad on Beale Street, but it's actually Drake's uncle. And then we ended up getting the rest of the footage in LA a couple weeks later with Dennis, with Drake's dad, to complete the video.
Wow, so you even had a stunt, Drake's dad.
Yeah, and we figured if we couldn't get Dennis, at the end of the day, it would be equally kind of funny if we just got Drake's uncle.
Mike, as Max mentioned, this is a fun song about being out with friends, but there's also this theme of male companionship and male friendship running through the record. So can you talk a bit about that and why you wanted to address that?
Yeah, I think that sort of support network of guys, especially on these sorts of party nights, is definitely something that is sort of the basis for the song Drake's Dad. But what I think is really interesting is sort of this kind of like next level of like, once that's all done, this idea of that person that you're going back to, and you want them to hold up that light, that sort of that more meaningful relationship. Not that our buddies are not.
There's different kinds of love, and I think there's real love between friends, and we truly love each other. But then the chorus goes, because I hold you so high and I hold you so tight, so hold up that light so I can come home to find you. So really, it's a song. It's a song about friends, but it's also a song about going home to see your partner and just and being sort of like the lighthouse when you're, especially in being in a band, we're away a lot, and knowing that you have somebody at home waiting for you is really comforting. Yeah, and so I think Mike's totally onto something.
Yeah.
There.
Well, musically speaking, the song is kind of an interesting departure for the band. Your history has been more guitar-based rock, and here you've put in program beats, gospel singers, samples, strings. What sort of went into this different kind of sound in this record? This more maybe pop-driven sound.
Yeah, we love a lot of different kinds of music. It's in our DNA to be like a rock and roll band where, when we play live, there's 2 guitars, bass, drums, keys. But when we kind of know how that sounds, and we know what it sounds just to plug in and play. So the beauty of going into the recording studio is chasing your wildest dreams when it comes to like the sonic palette. And if you were to see like our text message group when we're sharing music with each other, there's the new Chance the Rapper album or the Rihanna record or Tame Impala or some James Blake record, and there's so much amazing new music that's being made in 2016, and we like to think that we're sort of a part of that conversation.
Yeah. And Mike, has it been a similar evolution for you as a musician, sort of in terms of your influences? Did you come from much more of a rock background and now you feel like your palette is more expanded, or?
Yeah, I think we all did. I think just based on the instrumentation of the group, that's sort of where we started. Like Max said, when we started, we just plugged into our amps and that's all we knew. And that's kind of what we were listening to. And then as time went on, these pop influences and even like hip hop and all these sorts of genres that don't have as strict rules as rock music does. And we started taking their lead and seeing that, without those rules, you can integrate electronic elements or organic elements that are not a guitar or a keyboard or those sort of more traditional rock instruments.
Yeah.
And it's exciting, and it excites us, and it pushes us all the time to make something that we haven't made yet. And I think that's always the goal for us.
And does it allow, is it fair to say that it also allows for maybe different emotional qualities in the music too? Like, do you feel that it's sort of expanding into, pop and even hip hop, you're allowed to hit different emotional notes?
Yeah, you're totally right, because I get so sick of the rules of rock and roll, and I never want to feel beholden to like the rock gods or even like what our rock fans expect us to do, because that would just get so boring. And the first batch of songs on the record are kind of sadder breakup songs. And I love those songs, but I got to a certain point where I was like, I have more to my personality than that. And I love it when people are funny in songs. If you can pull it off, like Kanye is the whole spectrum of emotions. Like, he can be really
often
emotional.
within one song.
Often in one song. But I love laughing in a Kanye song. And and I love injecting like humor into the music. And I don't think enough like rock bands do that, because that's not in the framework of quote unquote rock music. And that's so boring to me. It's so bland.
And it's interesting because I think that rock sort of traditionally has been seen as, like, the pop stuff was seen as sort of commercial and very precious and produced, whereas rock allowed for spontaneity. Are you saying that maybe it's flipped now that rock has gotten?
Yeah, I think, and just the way rock and roll music has been recorded for a long time, you start to get into these situations where bands are going away for months at a time trying to record in this very old-fashioned kind of way, and I think that sort of limits them to the possibility. And for us, we kind of did it in these shorter bursts of recording where there was just no rules on who we would collaborate or what the instruments would be or where a song could go, and I think by breaking out of that sort of traditional way of doing it was really a blessing for us.
Yeah. So guys, we've been talking about the song Drake's Dad, but there's another song off the record that honors another father figure, and I want to just play a bit of that.
At the diner, I started crying. Pete said, "You got a friend in me." When the rain starts coming down, a little rain ain't bringing me down.
That's a little bit of A Little Rain, song for Pete from the new album Morning Report. So, Max, can you tell us who Pete is?
Yeah, Pete is Peter Rosenthal, and he's if you're sort of part of like the social justice community in Toronto, you know who he is. He's a lawyer, and he represents groups like the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty and First Nations groups and victims of police brutality. And he's a family friend, and he's just a really inspirational guy. And the record's called Morning Report because there's a lot of songs about friends and family, and I'm reporting on all these characters because I find all these characters in my life to be endlessly entertaining and have stories worth telling. And I wanted to write a song about Peter because it kind of goes back to this idea of just sort of your support network. And Peter's a guy who, has been there for me and been there for my family, but also been there for countless families in and around the Greater Toronto area. And he's always willing to lend a hand, and he does it with a big smile on his face. And I find that kind of person to be really inspiring. And so the song is just basically for him.
Well, it's interesting because, in talking about someone like him, sort of an activist and a social justice guy, there's again themes of that, like alongside the themes of brotherhood and connection. There's a theme of social justice on this record. So even on Drake's Dad, which is this kind of just good time song, there's this line. So I think about my neighbors and the politics of labor. Between Carl and Groucho, I couldn't tell you which I favor. So, Mike, the Arkells are known as this kind of crowd-pleasing band. So why did you want to address some of these social justice issues and political issues on this record as well?
Well, I think they're important issues to us because they're sort of important to our communities, and that's sort of that's where we live and on a day-to-day basis. And hearing other artists that have done that recently, like Chance the Rapper, for example, who's really focused on his community and mixing those messages between his community, his life, his friends, and combining, like in that exact quote, like this humor into a much more serious issue, but how they all sort of mingle and interact. I think that's just a part of Max's way of sort of his experience in Canada, and when we travel around, seeing the way, it's not always as nice.
Yeah.
And even a song like Making Do on the record has a lot of really meaningful statements about community and how it can be a frustrating thing. And I think that Pete's song is a good counterpoint in the sense that he's always positive that we can do something great if we all work together and not to let it get you down. So I think it all sort of mingles in a really interesting way on this record.
Max, the last thing I wanted to ask you then is, as the band has grown and you've become more and more successful on that question of staying connected to your loved ones, to your friendships, to your values, what do you guys talk about when you talk about how staying grounded and staying true to your values? What kind of conversations are you guys having?
The group of friends I have all work really interesting jobs back home, and most of them aren't in music. I have a friend, Julian, who makes a couple of appearances. It's actually his bachelor party in Drake's Day.
Hey, Julian, if you're listening.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And, he works in fundraising for United Way, right? And my mom is a high school teacher in Toronto at Central Tech, and she teaches kids with special needs. My dad was a social worker. So we're surrounded by people who actually have hard jobs and really meaningful jobs. And we think we're so privileged and lucky to just, sing songs and have them sung back at us by our fans. Like, it's kind of a joke of a job. And we're really, no, it's true. And we're so lucky to have it. And we really hold it precious and dear. Yeah. But that's what keeps us grounded, because we are so closely connected with people who actually have to work really hard.
Yeah. And the last thing I know, and you guys didn't make this public, but I want to mention it. I know that you did a very special show just for 10 people a little while ago as a generous act to a fan and a friend of the band. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. Well, we didn't want to mention it, but actually we're going to see her tonight. So Jill is now a friend of ours, and she lives in Waterloo, and she's 19, and she's going through cancer treatment right now. And her friend, Kristen, reached out asking if we could do something. And so we said, we'll pop up and do a little backyard soiree. And her 6 or 7 friends came over, and her mom and dad were there. And I really appreciate it, because the fact that Kristen reached out I was like, what a nice thing for a friend to do, to put herself out there and ask us to do it. And I appreciate a good idea. If anybody reaches out with a good idea, it's hard for me to say no. And this was especially a good idea because Jill's going through a tough time, and she's doing amazing through all of her treatment. So for us to lend a hand, to do the same thing we do every day, but if that can brighten someone's day, then we love to oblige.
Well done, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and congratulations on the new record. It's great.